This presentation, The Nuts and Bolts of Aquaculture in Ohio, is designed to give you a brief overview of the aquaculture industry in Ohio and how to get started. We like to use a 6-step strategy to get started in aquaculture, and step number 1 is learning a little bit about the aquaculture industry. By knowing the history and the current status of the industry, this will help you to determine if aquaculture is for you. History tells us that Ohio was the site of the first fish farm in the United States. There were actually 2 Cleveland physicians, Theodotus Garlick and H.A. Ackley, who were plastic surgeons actually by trade, but had a hobby of raising fish on the side. They actually completed the first successful artificial fertilization of fish eggs in the U.S. in 1853. They used trout eggs, and in the top picture you'll see the nation's first fish hatchery, which consisted of 3 ponds. They actually published their results in the Ohio Farmer, which was an early scientific journal, in 1857, so they are given credit with the first fish farm in the U.S. The middle picture shows an old-fashioned brook trout hauling tank, which I always find a little bit interesting. But aquaculture has evolved greatly over the past 150 years, and now it's quite a complex industry. Especially for the new producer, there's just so many facets that they have to think about. The producer has to think about banking, financing, insurance, how are they going to develop the business, and how are they going to fund the business. They need to know a little bit about university research and extension. They need to know who their suppliers are going to be for their feed, fingerlings, and equipment, and where they can count on getting services, veterinary, construction, transportation. They're going to have to deal with government agencies like the Ohio Department of Agriculture, the Ohio Environmental Protection Agency, and the Ohio Department of Natural Resources. There's a lot of legislation regarding aquaculture, dealing with farm associations like the Aquaculture Associations, Ohio Farm Bureau, and of course an increased emphasis lately on animal welfare. And then the product itself is very much the desire for the product is dictated by the media, what consumers want, and what the markets are available. So simply knowing how to raise fish is not enough anymore. You have to know a lot about all the different intricacies of the aquaculture industry. But aquaculture is growing in Ohio. In 1992, there were only about 50 so farms, and now we have over 173 farms with aquaculture permits in 2010. Some put the number of farms up closer to 300 in Ohio. We have several small farms or pilot scale operations that are operating without licenses, as they don't intend to sell their product. Of the 173 farms with permits in 2010, 80% of them had been in business less than 10 years, which means this is a very new industry, full of new and beginning farmers. But the ones that were in it obviously liked it, as 87% plan to maintain or expand their production. Aquaculture is good for the state in that it provides full-time employment and part-time employment for a lot of people, in addition to providing safe and wholesome food. There is an Ohio aquaculture plan that was developed with the Ohio Department of Agriculture, Ohio State University, Ohio Department of Natural Resources, Ohio Sea Grant, and a bunch of stakeholders that are interested in aquaculture in Ohio. And they came up with some key task force recommendations for the aquaculture industry to succeed in Ohio. There were 4 main areas where we thought that improvements could be made. That one was in aquaculture health, food safety, and marketing. The next was in aquaculture business, where they determined we needed more revolving loan programs and develop some enterprise budgets for aquaculture facilities. We wanted to improve aquaculture education and promote aquaculture education through the Hocking College program and the Ohio State University program, and continue aquaculture research by funding applied and basic research, addressing the identified needs in the industry. As a result of this initiative, a Ohio aquaculture industry analysis was conducted in 2010, and the plan and the report are both available on our website. They're great reading if you haven't read them yet. A lot of the training for aquaculture in Ohio is conducted through Ohio State University Extension programs. You may have attended some of our programs before. We have every other year we have a perch school. We've done a freshwater prawn harvest where we invite the public. We've had a multitude of specialty workshops like a live feed workshop. And every fall or spring we try to do a farm bus tour to actually get you out on other people's fish farms so you can see what others are doing in the state. We have a website where you can get information, and we have links to the aquaculture associations and really try to promote a lot of farmer-to-farmer networking. Ohio State University's aquaculture program's main role, however, is to conduct research. And we have a few focus areas that we concentrate on. Our main research program is called our OGIFT program, which stands for Ohio Genetic Improvement of Farm Fish Traits. Many people feel that the most impactful research that you can do in aquaculture at this point is through genetic selection. In other industries, such as the cattle industry, we've seen growth rate improvements of up to 50% in some of the species, and we hope to see this in some of our local fish as well. Over the past 7 years at Ohio State University, we have developed a superior strain of yellow perch that grows up to 45% faster than the local native strain. We are currently testing that in on-farm tests and hope to have that available for market soon. We've also developed a process for producing all male bluegill for food production here at OSU. The male bluegill grows much faster than the female bluegill and is best for food production. And so by being able to produce all male fingerlings, our growers should have better growth and better economics for producing this fish. We've also started doing some genetic selection for yellow perch to grow faster on a soy-based diet. Fish meal, which is currently the main supplier of protein in fish diets, is getting increasingly hard to find and increasingly more expensive. And so we'd like to substitute some of that animal-based protein with soy-based protein in the fish diets. And so we're actually creating a strain of yellow perch that grows well on this plant-based diet. And another recent research line of research is the all-female production of yellow perch. Yellow perch are opposite than bluegill in that particular species, the female grows much faster and larger than the male. So by producing all-female fingerlings, we can allow the producer to grow more of their fish to market size in the 18-month growing period. All of this research is supported by grants from Sea Grant, the North Central Regional Aquaculture Center, and USDA. We have some new Ohio initiatives in the industry which I think are exciting and are going to take us through the next decade and help us improve our aquaculture industry in Ohio. We have a company that's working on producing fish feeds in Ohio using Ohio ingredients. We have another company that is growing the black soldier fly larvae as a fish meal replacement, enabling us to perhaps lower the cost of some of our aquaculture diets, again improving the economics of raising fish. We have many that are interested in the indoor culture of marine shrimp. This is a new technology where marine shrimp are being grown in indoor recirculating aquaculture systems, and the systems can be placed near population centers where there would be a high demand for this type of product. We've seen an increase in tilapia production and processing and marketing to the ethnic markets, a huge increase in interest in aquaponics, which is the rearing of fish and then raising plants on the effluent of the fish. That's been a really growing field. And we're trying to increase the awareness and collaboration in the financial industry so that we can more easily obtain funding for some of these new aquaculture operations. One question we get asked quite frequently is there any money available? Aquaculture is traditionally very hard to finance. First off, in terms of grants, there are very few. People seem to think it would be a great thing to give people grants to get started in this new business, but most of agriculture is high risk, and there's not a lot of granting agencies that put money into it. There are some, but most of the grants, in our experience, go to existing fish farmers. There's a group called SARE at SARE.org that provides some small producer grants if you're interested in perhaps implementing some new research on your farm that would make your operation more sustainable. And then for some tobacco farmers in southern Ohio have been able to take advantage of the tobacco program to obtain grants to start new initiatives on their farm. As far as loans are concerned, the Farm Service Agency does have some loans that can be used for aquaculture, but most of our farmers tend to go to their own banks. And unfortunately, most banks do not understand aquaculture. We try to help whenever we can. If the bankers have questions about aquaculture or the industry, we're happy to supply them with information about Ohio aquaculture. There are a lot of resources out there to help you get started in aquaculture. Some really good websites. The North Central Regional Aquaculture Center, the NCRAC, or the North Central Regional Aquaculture Center, has been around for over 20 years, and they have a lot of really nice manuals, fact sheets, and videos dealing with species and systems that are used in the Midwest. E-Extension is a new website where there's a freshwater aquaculture community of practice. There's some good information on there, along with 2 virtual workshops that were recently conducted and recorded, and they're there for you to watch any of those presentations on the E-Extension site. Of course, our website and our popular listservs, where you can send us an email and sign up for any of our 3 listservs and get regular information about fish farming activities or workshops or just general information regularly delivered to your inbox. My favorite industry newspaper is the Fish Farming News. The reason I like this is it's a national newspaper. There are some other good aquaculture newspapers. They tend to be more international or North American in scope, and I like those too. But this one's my favorite, and my favorite part of the newspaper is that every month they highlight a different aquaculture farm somewhere in the U.S., and they talk about how they got started and what they do, and it's always very interesting, and I always learn something. And then, of course, we highly encourage you to join one of the 2 producer associations or both of the producer associations in Ohio, the Ohio Aquaculture Association and the Fish Farmers of Ohio Association. There's also a National Aquaculture Association called the NAA. By joining these associations, it gives you access to leaders in the industry. It's important for networking, really making an impact, and having control over your industry, helping to determine who's going to regulate your industry and what kind of laws and regulations you have to follow. So that was step 1 on the background of the aquaculture industry. The next thing we encourage you to do is assess your goals and resources. We did a study a while back in 2010 and developed some of these characteristics of Ohio aquaculture producers. 91% were male and 77% used the internet, which is an important way to access information. 72% did not farm anything else on their farm, so aquaculture farming was the first time they'd been involved in farming. 98% were white with an average age of 54. These demographics are very similar to all farmers in Ohio. About half of them are in a producer association, and the majority, 60%, work off the farm as well. As we stated earlier, 80% have less than 10 years of experience in aquaculture. However, close to 90% plan to maintain or expand their operations. Another assessment you need to really think about is what are the economic considerations of having an aquaculture operation. I really encourage you to have a business plan. Or do you have property already that's suitable? That can be a big help. If you're planning on doing pond culture, do you have access to water and clay soil? Do you have capital? Do you have enough capital for construction of the facility, buying the equipment, paying the labor, the insurance? Can you cover some of the unexpected? Does your financial lender understand aquaculture and that it can take a while to start the payback? Typically, you have to wait at least 12 to 18 months for your first crop. And what we typically see in the industry is about 5 years until you can make a profit. So you really have to think, is this return on investment higher than what you could get in other investments? How does that fit into your personal goals and your situation? You also need to think about site considerations. There are restrictions when it comes to where you can put an aquaculture operation. Are there some zoning restrictions? We have a farmer right now who is having problems because people are claiming he built ponds in a wetland area. Do you have year-round access to your farm? Can large trucks get on your farm if you need to sell large volumes of fish? Do you have room for expansion? Have you thought about biosecurity? We see thefts from humans. We see predation from birds. Do you have any kind of, you're using water from a wild stream where perhaps disease could enter into your property? These are all things you need to consider. Water is, of course, one of the most expensive or one of the most important characteristics of an aquaculture farm. You need to know the volume, the quality. You want to try to conserve it as much as possible and be able to control it. And of course, waste management. When you drain that pond or those tanks, where are you going to put that effluent? Are you going to have an artificial wetland, or do you have a holding pond? And of course, dependable utilities and a backup system, a generator and alarm systems if you're in tanks, of course, are big priorities. There are also social legal considerations. Neighbor relations, as Ohio Farm Bureau will tell you, are always very important. Some people get skittish about a fish farm coming nearby. They think the fish might smell or that they might have other problems. You need to have a good relationship with the state agencies that regulate aquaculture, the Department of Natural Resources, Department of Agriculture, Ohio EPA, of course OSU Extension for your training and education needs, and Ohio Sea Grant. You need to make sure you have all the permits necessary for constructing your facility as well as for raising and selling fish, and that you're following all of the laws of the state. Production considerations are very important. Selecting that species, you have to know about their biology. What about their market? What kind of production technology? Can they be raised in ponds or tanks or cages? And where are you going to get these fish? Are you going to start with your own brood stock, buy fingerlings? Where do you get feed, chemicals, equipment, information, advice? All of these things are things you need to think about in the beginning. If something happens to your fish, where do you get disease diagnostics? And is it possible to get dependable labor to help you on your fish farm? Once we've assessed some of those goals and resources and you still want to do this, we need to think about what system are we going to use. There's a lot of things that we use to determine our production method. There are 4 main production methods used in Ohio. There's pond culture in anything from 1/4 acre up to 2 and 3 acre ponds. There's cage culture systems that we use in existing bodies of water. There's indoor recirculating systems, or RAS systems as we like to call them, which use tanks and biofilters to clean the water. Aquaponic type systems fall under this category. And if you have large volumes of flowing water, you can also use raceway culture. We do have 1 or 2 areas in Ohio where they use this culture method, although it's not very popular in Ohio. Once you determine what system you're going to use, the next thing we look at, what species are you going to raise? In Ohio, as you can see, you have quite a choice of species that are currently being raised for aquaculture. Some of them are raised just for food fish, and some of them are raised for sport fish or pond stocking. And you have several that are produced for both. For example, yellow perch actually have a higher value on the sports fish market than they do as a food fish. Trout, the same thing as well. So some of these species can have multiple markets, and that's always a good thing. But to pick which species you're going to raise, you have to know a little bit about the biology of each species, a little bit about the production of each species, and then how you're going to market that species. After you've selected your system and your species, it's time to start putting together that business plan. The reality check for aquaculture in Ohio is that our enterprise budgets show that there is little profit to be made simply growing fish for food. If you're planning on buying fingerlings and then feeding them out and then selling them to a processor, there's very little profit in that production cycle. You really have to think about becoming vertically integrated, which means doing everything from holding your own brood stock, hatching your own fingerlings, to perhaps processing and marketing your product. You really have to think about finding those high-value niche markets, maybe processing to get some extra money out. Agritainment, having people come out and fish out your ponds is a way to make money, and growing high-value species. So this business planning is very important. On average, we see about 5 years for a profitable business. There are several online business plans that you can use, and we do have consultants here that can help you develop a business plan. So if you've gone through all of this, you've learned about the industry and assessed your goals and resources, you've determined your system and your species, and you've worked out a business plan, it's time to conduct a pilot operation where you actually build a small facility and get some practice using it. They always say it's better to make your mistakes on a small scale and then be able to transfer that experience up to a large scale. And we're here to help. So congratulations on learning a little bit more about aquaculture today. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact us. Thank you.